Good morning. Good morning. Um, Happy Wednesday. And I wanted to come online to give you a little bit of a pep talk around fear because today is Mindset Reset Wednesday. And today is officially known as the hump day, the midweek slump and hump to get over into riding down into the weekends. So you will know from other lives and things that I have done that that is not the way that I like to think about things. I like to think about them a little bit differently. So today I'm coming to you live to talk a little bit differently about fear. So if you're able to jump on live with me, make sure you hashtag live, say hi, let me know that you are here. And if you are watching the replay, hashtag replay and let me know that you are here. So fear, what exactly is fear? So my understanding and appreciation of fear is that fear is something that stops me, that holds me back from doing the thing that I could be excited about doing if I chose to be. Fear is an inhibitor. Fear is a delaying tactic. Fear is a procrastination, party pooping activity that I sometimes am faced with. Now, identifying fear is one of the most critical parts of this process. As you'll know with everything, you have to notice what's actually happening for you. You have to notice, you have to identify it, you have to be emotionally intelligent to know that you are afraid of something or that fear is halting you in your tracks. So for example, a lot of people, myself included, will say that we're afraid of heights, okay? We're afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of heights. Heights isn't the thing that I'm afraid of. I am afraid of falling from a tall height. I'm afraid of the feeling that I have when I am up high as opposed to when I'm on the ground, because it makes me feel dizzy. It makes me feel unsure. It makes me feel as though I could fall because I've lost my sense of balance. So getting really specific about what that fear is. What I find interesting is that when people are in business as entrepreneurs, we let the fear of what if hold us back, okay? So as an entrepreneur, you're leading the way. You are in a business, you're doing something new, and you've never done it before. So to be frightened of the unknown is a very interesting concept. And this is where I want you to give yourself a little bit of a hard talk around this, because being afraid of something that you've not experienced before, or being afraid of something that might occur, isn't necessarily worth stopping yourself from trying something. And it's really understanding whether or not you're frightened of a feeling that you've experienced before, if you're frightened or you're allowing fear to take over that instant and turn it into something that you're not looking forward to. So fear is something that supports you in stopping and reevaluating a situation. So say that you're really, really excited about making a certain phone call. And then all of a sudden the fear sets in of, oh my God, but what if they say this? Oh my God, what if they say that? Oh my God, what if they just hang up on me? What if they don't want me to talk to them? What if? So you've got the fear of what if. It's an imagined future that you are projecting from maybe experiences that you've had previously, maybe worries about your self-doubt, maybe your abilities within yourself. But I want you to ask yourself the question, so what? Okay, so what if somebody doesn't want to hear that from you? Hey, Hannah, thank you so much for joining. We're just talking about, or at least I'm talking about fear and how it holds us back, especially as entrepreneurs. So I'm at the point of, so you're frightened of making a phone call because you've got this imagined future of what if they don't want that phone call? What if they're not happy to hear from you? What if they don't want to talk to you? What if they don't want to hear about what you're trying to explain to them? What if they don't want to talk at all and they hang up on you? So what? Okay. If that's the case and that actually occurs, so what? What does that actually do? As an entrepreneur, if this is something that you're passionate about, if this is something that actually matters to you, if this is something that you really believe in, not everyone is going to be on board. And that's actually okay, because there's other people out there that are meant to be working with those other people. It doesn't mean that you don't still do what you feel is true to you and is the right thing to do. So when you have a fear that you are faced with, I want you to say, so what? What is the worst that's going to happen with that situation? You know, and is that enough to actually stop me from taking this action? And then I want you to circle round and think about the consequence if you don't take that action. Okay? Let yourself get into the fear mode of, but if I don't do this, if I don't make this said phone call, if I don't take this particular action in my business, in my life, then what's the consequence? What actually happens then? I stay doing the same thing, not allowing myself to move forwards. Is that actually acceptable with me? Would I prefer to risk being hung up on? Or am I willing just to stay where I am now because I don't want to risk the fear of being rejected? You know, and that's a totally different topic. You know, rejection is another thing that we can deal with. But essentially, fear is a mechanism to keep you where you are. And it's a way in which our bodies and our brains say, hang on a sec, do we actually really want to do this? But people have misunderstood fear and have allowed it to creep into everyday activities that are no longer life-threatening. You know, fear is there to keep us alive, to keep us safe, to allow us to identify risks and hazards and things along those lines. It's not meant to stop us from walking our authentic path. You know, so we really need to get some perspective here, and we need to allow fear to become a friend, to support us in taking the aligned action. So turn that fear speak around into, I'm feeling fearful about X, taking this action. So what? Okay, so what, fear? And what's wrong with that? What's wrong if that person doesn't want to hear what I'm saying? What's wrong if I'm doing a live in my Facebook group and people don't necessarily resonate with it? What's wrong with that? You know, so what? So what is the outcome? What is the problem with that? If there isn't one, if there isn't actually a justifiable answer to your so what, please turn it around and say, however, if I don't take this action, then what? You know, let your fear speak to that action, you know, and the fact that, you know, I'm frightened of staying in this place, of being exactly where I am now in 1 year's time, because I didn't take this step. I didn't push myself into a place where I'm still growing, where I'm still learning, where I'm still understanding these new experiences, you know, and that's where we want to be. We want to be testing and trying things out and learning what works for us and what doesn't, because we have these amazing imaginations, and fear is one of those things, because oftentimes we are frightened of things that we've never experienced. You know, like my fear of heights. You know, it's not a fear of heights, it's a fear of falling. I've never actually fallen from anything high, thank God. However, I can imagine having just fallen over in the street that saw that, you know, there is a serious life-threatening danger from falling from a tall building. That's a legitimate fear, but do I let it stop me from experiencing things that are high? No, I don't. But I do judge the risks and the hazards and my emotional state around that as to whether or not I can do it on certain days or not on other days, or how far I push myself into that feeling of not being able to manage my balance. In business, this is so different. In business, you know, there is no life and death situation that we can't ever come back from. You know, you think about so many incredibly famous entrepreneurs, you know, they've really pushed the boundaries, and more often than not, they've had businesses that have been bankrupted, that have not gone well, that have not succeeded in the way that they wanted to first time round. But they didn't let that experience frighten them from doing it again. They made all of that lessons, and then they smashed it out of the park, and they became incredible entrepreneurs, running multiple businesses, doing amazingly wonderful things in the world. And actually, what makes them more relatable and more understandable is the fact that they had that failed business in the first place. They had that business that tanked, you know, and all of those amazing lessons have made them the people that they are. And actually, they've embraced that. You know, they've embraced these wonderful things, and they've turned that fear into, you know, I guess a prized position in their industry that they can talk to and become relatable from to other people. And this is, you know, this is so important, because so often we let this fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being eloquent enough, fear of failing, making a mistake, all of these things around fear, you know, so what? So I make a mistake. What exactly does that mean? I think I was talking the other day around, you know, fear of failure. And so many of us, you know, don't set our own expectations of what failure means, especially when we're running our own businesses. When we're at school and we're in a, you know, a curriculum-based environment, university or college, you know, there is a pass mark and a fail mark, because they have to identify somewhere along the lines what is an acceptable pass mark and what is a mark that says they don't understand enough to move on to the next phase, therefore they need to redo. It's not a failure, it's a, you know, not having as much knowledge and applying it in the appropriate ways yet. There's always that yet, because as you know, if you've been to school, if you've been to college, if you've been to uni, you can retake it, you know? So even in that environment, failing is not all consuming, you get to do it once and you're done. So fear of failure, when we're in our own businesses, you know, we set the standards of what a pass mark is and what a fail mark is. We set the expectation of how we succeed and how we don't succeed, you know, and making a failure or making a mistake, doing something in not the most, in not the best way or the easiest way, or having an outcome that doesn't really hit the mark the first time, that's a lesson. That's not a failure. You know, people aren't going to judge you on it because they don't know what your idea of success is and what your idea of failure is. So you set the tone. You know, this is the most exciting thing. This is your business. You're doing it your way, and you're setting the expectations for pass, for fail, and what fear does to hold you back. So how is, I can see there's a few people online with me, so say hi when you come on, and let me know, you know, how often does fear stop you? How often does fear hold you back from doing the things that you think you need to do, or doing the things that you actually want to do, or being intuitively guided to do? You know, how often does this fear, do you allow fear to stop you in your tracks or take away the joy from the initial feeling? You know, I know myself. Oh, hey, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining. So I know myself that when I have an inspired idea and I'm like, oh, I need to do that, follow that excitement and that like rush of, oh my God, that's a genius idea. I want to do this and I want to do it now. The difference then is, you know, fear sets in and says, but maybe you can't do this, or maybe you shouldn't do that, or, you know, that's okay. That's when that joy and that excitement from that inspired action kind of like leaves. And then I'm left thinking, oh, was that a good idea? Should I have done that? Should I be doing that? Maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe I'll wait. You know, and that's not the intuitive inspired action that's happened, that was real in that moment. That was absolutely real. It was the fear that allowed that communication to me around, actually, maybe you shouldn't, because these are the consequences possibly if you do, which are all potentially imagined, as opposed to, that passion and that drive that you feel in that inspired action moment. And you go, actually, I want to tap into that because that felt great. And even if it doesn't work out the way that it should do, or I want it to, it's okay, because that rush of joy and excitement is totally worth it. That's telling me to do something, naturally, authentically, that's telling me. So what have I got? Hannah, I think the common occurrence is when I worry about other people's opinions or rejection. Yes, absolutely. I'll talk about that in a second. And it's Michelle, it's the fear of making irreversible mistakes that will cost money. Yeah, so tangible stuff, I understand, but you weigh up the pros and cons, and you don't allow the fear to stop you from doing it, because that fear will remain there, telling you whether or not you should do something or you shouldn't do something. But actually, you'll never know unless you do it. You never know the actual outcome, and you won't know the actual lesson. So that's when your rational mind has to kick in and say, okay, so I could lose some money on making this deal or making this purchase or whatever. Is it worth trying? Is it worth seeing whether or not I'm right or I'm wrong? And then it's not a fear-based decision. It's not allowing fear to stand in the way of what you are doing. Fear has been an indicator of something that might cause difficulty or damage your ability to trust yourself, or your ability to know what the right decisions are in the future. But it doesn't have to have you causing, it doesn't have to stop you from making those decisions going forwards. Fear, more often than not, is that paralysis effect that goes, I'm actually not going to make a decision about either way because I don't know what to do. And I just don't know myself anymore. So making a move one way or another, saying, so what if I make an irreversible mistake that costs money? So what? Is it $5 we're talking about, or is it 5,000? What's the level of risk I'm willing to take here, to find out if it will work or if it won't work. So get the rational mind in there and figure out a solution based on what is also the consequence if I don't do this. If I don't actually find a rational way forward to decide what action I'm taking here, does that mean that I'm never going to be able to take these decisions? Does that mean that I'm never going to be able to move forward in the business, that I'm never going to be able to take a risk, a calculated risk, and try something different? Am I always going to stay the same? Do I want to be in exactly the same place as I am now next year? Do I feel that this is too risky to do or not do? So those kind of tangible outcomes are still relevant for this. And those questions of so what, and do I still want, and what are the consequences if I don't, allow the fear to ring true on both of those. And Hannah, you're right. The common occurrence is when I worry about other people's opinions or rejection. Yeah. So the rejection piece, people can't reject you in the sense that, they don't own you. They might not like what you're saying. It's their choice to turn it off. But do you want to be, what's the opposite of rejection? The fear of somebody not liking what you're saying, the fear of somebody not liking what you're doing. Again, so what? What is the outcome to you? If they don't like what you're doing or like what you're saying, so what? Does it matter? And if it does matter, why does it matter? But essentially, if people don't like what you're saying or what you're doing, they're not likely to be in your sphere of audience anyway, because they won't be attracted to you, they won't be aligned to you. And other people's opinions are nothing to be feared. Everyone has something to bring to the table. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with it or absorb it, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong if it doesn't align with your message, because your message is there for certain people and their message is there for certain people. And that's absolutely okay. Both can coexist. So, you know, I think it's making peace with the fact that not everyone is going to like us. You know, there's a whole heap of people out there that I think I would probably grate on, or I would jar with, that they would not appreciate listening to me, the tone of my voice, you know, my accent, the way that I look, the way that I have my mannerisms, whatever it might be. People are just not going, there are just going to be some people out there that are just not going to like me, you know, not because I'm doing anything wrong, but just because they weren't put on this planet to connect with me or to like me. We were sent here to trigger one another, to think about different things. So, you know, finding your peace with that is probably most important. But that fear aspect of, you know, I'm frightened of what somebody might think, what somebody might say, or somebody might reject me. It's that so what, follow that train of thought on. So what if they do, you know? And then if, you know, is it logical? Do you need to take action around that or not? If it's not logical and it's fear-based, then it doesn't have to exist, because it's very unlikely that they're going to come into your sphere and be in your audience. And then align that with, what are you more fearful of? Not taking this action that you know you need to take, or that you felt you needed to take, because the consequence of not doing that is something. You know, the consequence of not doing that is just staying here and being in the same place in a year's time, not having evolved, not having progressed, not having tried anything new, and having been driven by fear. So does that resonate with you? Does that make an understanding? Okay, yeah, not giving your power away to something you can't control. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's I love the phrase of it being an imagined future. That's a really powerful way of looking at it for me, because I can't specifically see future events in the way that we see the present or the past. However, you know, I know that I have a vision of what I want my future to be, and taking this action, does that align with that vision? Yes. Is it going to potentially be uncomfortable? Is it going to potentially ruffle some feathers? Yeah, sure. But I'm not going to get to this place without doing that. You know, I'm not going to get to this place without speaking my mind, without having an opinion, without doing my thing in my own way. And I have to be able to ride the fear, you know, and not let that stop me. That's a great, you know, fear can be used as a great indicator around, what is the consequence if I don't do this action? You know, think about that. What is the consequence if I don't take this step? But just knowing that actually sometimes the consequence of not doing something outweighs the fear of being paralyzed in that particular moment. So, you know, when you find that you actually are in a fear place, or you're being driven by fear, it only stops you to imagine what could happen, you know? So then, without being fearful, you can take an action. And what is more frightening, to take the action and have a consequence, or not take the action and have a consequence? You know, so what with the fear? What is it actually we're frightened of, as opposed to just feeling that fear? And then going into, okay, well, if I do listen to this fear and I don't take this action, and I let that paralyze me and stop me, then what? You know, am I willing to risk the consequence of just staying put? Or, you know, what is the consequence of not taking that action? It's a really, it's a different way of using your fear mechanism and appreciating what it is that you're fearful of. So use that fear mechanism in a supportive way. You know, challenge yourself to think, what is that fear telling me? So what? So what am I frightened of? And then tell yourself, okay, but what do I have to be more frightened of if I don't do this action? You know, what is the consequence of not? So hopefully that's given you a different way of looking at fear, and how you can think to turn your fears around and actually use fear as a way of propelling you forward as opposed to paralyzing you and holding you back. Fear is something that we all struggle with. It is that fight or flight response to doing something that we've not done before. It's a natural way of surviving. However, it doesn't have to encroach on everyday activities that we don't need to be frightened of, you know? So getting your fear into perspective and making sure you ask, so what? And then go down the route of, what are the consequences if I don't do this thing? You know, can you live with that? Can you live with that particular situation? Anyway, happy Mindset Reset Wednesday. I'm so excited to hear how this works for you. Make sure that when you watch the replay, you put #replay and then tell me what and how you're going to use this going forwards. You know, if and when today something comes up and you notice the fear coming in, let me know how you've approached this, what your so what was and what your consequence was of not doing something, and how did you turn it around. I'm so looking forward to hearing you putting this into action and actually empowering yourself through the fear trigger that you have. It's going to be so powerful for you to use this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your outcomes. Okay. Oh, Hannah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for being here and joining me for this time. I wasn't expecting it to last so long, but I obviously had so much to say about this. And it is something that we are all so greatly affected by. So yes, so hopefully this will make a really big difference and enable you to feel, you know, triggered by your fear, but not stopped through it. Okay, happy Wednesday, and I look forward to hearing how you put this into practice. Bye.